Good evening, folks. Ron Motta here, welcoming you to Activate Worcester. And you may be looking at this shirt that I have on, okay? It says New England Patriots. And the reason I'm wearing it, they are in a nadir. They are probably at the bottom, not only of the league, but maybe at the bottom for the franchise since they became a franchise back in the 60s. I've been rooting for them for a long time, through thick, thin, and anybody can jump on the bandwagon when they're doing well. Well, I'm still on the bandwagon, still supporting them, even though I'm very cognizant of all the problems. And that's why on a cold November day, like a dummy, I'm still wearing my New England Patriots shirt. That being said. Also, just to bring you up to date, I came back in time to be a warden last week, and that was an interesting election. Not much has changed throughout the city. Most of the incumbents were re-upped for another term, if you will, except the school department. The school department, the school committee, really, really radical change with it, and some people who have been on it for many, many terms, Tracy O'Connell being one, and so on and so forth, all bumped and out. And several new folks in it, including our own Kathy Roy, who has been here several times, and she won a fairly close election, but she did win. So she's a first-timer on the district council, on the school committee, and there's a lot of discontent about what's happening in the schools, and let's see what the new breed ends up doing to hopefully correct some of those issues. The thing that I always suggest that you do, if you voted, congratulations, and if you didn't vote, shame on you. You really kind of lose your chance to complain at that point. But the thing I always suggest that you do, just because you do vote, your duty is not done as a citizen. Check it out, see what the votes are that are coming up and so forth. If there are things that you see that you like or dislike, get in touch with your people and let them know how you feel. Otherwise, they operate in a vacuum, and you've basically lost your voice at that point, and it kind of negates the value of your vote. But once again, thank you for those who did come out and vote. Next year will be the big one, but remember, the citywide is the one that affects us all on a regular and day-to-day basis as well. So that being said, we are now heading into the holiday season now that Halloween is over, and we just got back from a big trip, which was pretty amazing. We went on the Colette travel, took us to Scotland, took us to the northern boundaries of England, York, Chester, Stratford-on-Avon, meaning Shakespeare. We even went to Oxford University. No, we did not matriculate there, which is $9 grand a year, by the way, and you can get a degree there, bachelor's degree in 3 years. Kind of amazing. But that was that. Then from there, we went to London and had a great time. A lot of incredible things to see there that you guys are all familiar with. And then just for fun, my wife and I, along with two other couples, went to Paris for 3 days. And that was a lot of fun as well, a little different situation. And as you probably have heard, and they're correct, if you don't speak French in Paris, you're basically a stranger in a strange land. But you can make do if you know where you're going and so on and so forth. And we had a wonderful hotel right adjacent to the Eiffel Tower, which is beautiful. We took a great boat ride down the Seine River and saw everything, including Notre Dame Cathedral. We did go to the Louvre. We did see Mona Lisa, and it's bigger than you think, but smaller than you had hoped. And it's totally insane in there. They have her in the middle of a room, and no, they don't have people organized in lines. It's just like a cluster. And what people are doing, which really frosted me, but I'm an old guy, they have the Mona Lisa behind them, and what they're doing is taking selfies. This is one of the most amazing pieces of art in Western culture, and they're taking selfies, like one after another, which is mind-bending. But the thing of it is, when I saw the painting itself, there is something pretty magical about it. I just wish that I didn't have 5 people bumping into me every second, so I really couldn't get a fix on it. And it's not like you see on Rick Steves' shows where there's like nobody in these places. When he does his shows, there's 5, 6, 10 people walking around. When you get in the real world, there's 500 or 600 people, and you really end up missing a lot, which is the way it is. It's too bad. Last postscript. Several times I walked around the Eiffel Tower because, again, we stayed there, and there were military guys walking around in groups, anywhere from 4 to 12. Not only were they hot, but they also had machine guns with them. So, and they never tell you what's going on. So the hypothesis is that there were bomb threats. So bottom line is, even though coming back, the flights were great, when you get back to Logan Airport, you have to go through customs. And it took us, from the time we deplaned, it took us 2 hours to get through customs. There were 500 of us. They've got 12 of these booths all set up. 3 of them were being manned. So 500 people or more, because there were 3 planes that landed within 15 minutes of each other. And it's a pretty aggravating way to end your vacation, to stand in line with people hacking and coughing for the better part of 2 hours. And then just for fun, by the time you're in your vehicle, now it's Friday afternoon in Boston. It's about 4:30, 4:45. It's a sunny day, and as you guys know, the sun sets very, very low that time of year, or this time of year. And going through the Brighton-Allston area is just murder. So it took us about 2 hours to drive home. So, but at any rate, it's wonderful to be back, and wonderful to be back at the mic again. And we have a very special guest, a newbie, if you will, a good man named John Longhi, okay? And John is part of the WRCC. He's a guy that has a lot of very, very good ideas, and he's somebody that just doesn't sit in the wings. He's somebody that wants to make things happen. And I'm delighted to have him on, and I'd like to have him on many
Thank you
times
for
in the
having me,
future.
Ron. And
for sure. You may want to share with the people a little bit about your background, which
Sure.
is pretty diverse.
Just a quick
Not
point.
perverse, but diverse. And maybe a
Well-
little of that too.
quick point to your Patriots. So
Sure.
I'm not panicking just yet. I grew up with Hugh Millen and Scott Zolak, who I did like,
The good old
Tony
days.
Eason, so I'm not panicking yet. We had a good 20-year reign, so
Absolutely. We're
don't
spoiled.
don't panic.
Totally spoiled.
But yeah, I joined the WRCC back in after the 2020 elections. That's when I really started to feel that something wasn't really going right.
Amiss. Something's amiss.
And I'll be honest with you, prior to that, I always trusted people that were in positions of power, whether it be political or to do the right thing, or there was always a majority up there that would take care of things.
We were raised that way,
Yes,
to believe in higher-ups, so to speak.
but 2020 really opened my eyes. That's when I started searching, for organizations, and I did find the WRCC. And actually, you were speaking about Kathy Roy. I remember I called her, and we met at a McDonald's.
Mm-hmm.
She vetted me, and that was probably the best thing that ever happened. I'm glad for Kathy. She brought me into the fold.
Without a doubt.
And then I became a clerk in my ward and precinct, and last week was my 3rd time. And I was really actually happy to see the turnout this time for especially for a Worcester municipal election. I mean, I don't know, I've heard between 20 and 22%, which isn't
Not bad.
not bad. It could be a lot better.
In my precinct, it's normally about 25 to 30, but we always do more than the city does, because where I live, I'm in precinct 2, Ward 2. It's very residential, so people either own homes or they're renting. So there's not a lot of transients, if you will, and as a result, there's a really good involvement. But still, when I say really good, quote unquote, in the olden days, for the elections like this, the citywides, they used to get 60 and 70%. Now, even if you get 25%, that means that 75% of the eligible voters are deciding, I'll stay home because I got better things to do. And now they've made it so easy to vote, you don't have to be there on election day. You can do absentee vote. There's all sorts of things that you can do. And it's really a shame that people don't vote. But I have to say this, that the visibility these elections get compared to what it used to be is minimal. A big part of that, I believe, is the Telegram and Gazette is like their readership is down like 80%. People don't get the paper. And that used to be the focal point for all the politicians, where they stood for and everything else. And they used to beat the drum. Remember, folks, go out and vote, November, whatever, it's election day, et cetera, et cetera. And that used to drum it up. But little by little, I guess I'll use the term voter apathy has come in. And people either, they don't have time to vote, or they don't think their vote counts, or they all stink and I hate them all. Well, if you hate them all, find those that you hate least and vote for them, but find out about them. And it's a shame. And in our city, it's the same. I mean, even in this election, basically, Petty won his 7th term as mayor, if you will.
Well, pretty much the city council did pretty much stay the same.
It stays the same, and that's the problem. But sometimes change is not necessarily a good thing. But there's, again, this apathy. Well, good old Joe, and I'm not knocking Petty one way or the other, but it's important to know where these people stand with all the different aspects of life in Worcester now, because things are changing. I see a real dichotomy in this city now. I see a certain group of people, money is no problem, money is no object. Look at what they're paying for rent now. But rent's, a 1-bedroom is going for $2,000. But what happens to the lower middle income people who are being squeezed? And from the other perspective, what's happening to the seniors? Because taxes continue to escalate, and it's not just the taxes, it's the cost of food and everything else. And if you're on a fixed income, there's nowhere to go. And one thing I just don't see are any concrete provisions to provide elderly housing. And I think that's a real dilemma. And I know we have other issues in the city. There's a major influx of new people, some legal, some not so legal.
Yes.
And that's draining a lot of resources. And then we also have, as we know, a big homeless issue. So there's a lot going on in the city, and I'm not so sure that what I've seen, and I'm being bipartisan when I say this, I'm not so sure that I've seen any concrete direction that we're going in to cure those things. I'm not seeing lots of new businesses coming in.
Exactly.
And that's the
You're
life.
going to build a tax base.
Exactly. So who's left to shoulder it? It's the guys like you and I that own homes.
I mean, having lived in Worcester, I've seen the dual tax rate, and I mean, I really feel for the business owner, because that's a big part of their
without a doubt,
their money and what they have to pay in taxes, and if you lose that tax base, then it falls onto the residential, and you know what's going to happen there, where they'll even move one town out that has better. Which
is exactly what's happening.
Yep.
So this is where we're at. And again, I live right off West Boylston Street, and I drive up and down that street every day from literally one side all the way up to Holden in some cases. And businesses that have been closed remain closed. And I always found that to be a harbinger of negative things. There should be people more than happy to go in and take that piece of real estate over and to do something with it, and it's not happening.
It's not happening.
And that's not a healthy thing. Yes, I know downtown is in this resurgence mode. They've done amazing things where Polar Park is, and that whole area, which used to be basically borderlining on a slum, has really taken off. There's all sorts of high-rise apartments that are going in there, but those are what they call market rate housing. And if you have $2,500 a month to pop for a 2-bedroom or more, you're cool. And the problem is the local people can't afford that.
I can't afford it.
So you have folks, especially now, that are working in Framingham, they're working in Waltham, they're working in Boston, which those places are just out of sight price-wise. So what do? They come to Worcester.
They come to Worcester.
And the other part, you got the train that you can take in and the Pike, but also a lot of people now are working remotely out of their own homes.
Yep.
So they've got an apartment, they don't even have a car, and life is good, and they can make it happen. But the average family that's making 30, 40, 50,000 a year, less taxes, considering all the other inflationary issues, where do they go?
Yeah. And I was just, to your point, I was just talking to my neighbor that they moved in 5 months ago from Boston, nice young couple, and they said exactly what you had just said, that it was just getting so expensive in Boston.
Sure.
That, they bought the place next to mine, and I was like, wow, you consider that cheaper than Boston? Oh. And then I looked at some of the Boston.
Indeed.
It's
Indeed.
I don't blame them.
this is where the city is at right now, and I think maybe one of the indicators is to see what's happened with the school committee, and that's another interesting aspect as well. And a lot of people don't know this. They say, well, I don't have kids in the school system. Why should I be aware of it? Well, do you pay taxes? Hello, yes, you do. You realize over 60% of every tax dollar is going into the school system. And if you don't know what's happening, shame on you. And these people have to be, brought to task if you don't like the way things are going.
And I think, and see your thoughts on this, but I think maybe the school committee, I think, was the reason for a little larger turnout maybe this time around, because I think that was the biggest change that I saw.
Well, it was the big, and you had Laura Clancy, who had been in several times, and she got booted out. Benenda is back in, which is also interesting. But the other thing that they did, as you know, with the school, it's another issue, another day we can talk about it. But what they did is, rather than having the school committee basically at large, okay, they broke it down by area.
Yep.
And there is some legal consequences, which is why they had to do it. They were afraid of lawsuits. But the real reason they did it, at least this was a cover-up, so that you could have representation that's totally local. Well, if you live in an area that's white or Hispanic or whatever, okay, that's fine. But you're not going to have independent school systems for each little district that you have. That's ridiculous. You really should have, in my opinion, back to the at-large system, where you're doing things that are the right thing for all the students, not the black students or the Ghanaian students or the Irish or the Italians or whatever.
Right.
This is supposed to be a melting pot, guys. We learned that, back in civics or whatever it was in the 50s, 60s, and 70s. America is supposed to be a melting pot. If you really like where your ancestors came from, whether it's Albania, Italy, or you name it, guess what? They still have boats going the other way.
Yeah.
And you can go back to where things are, go for it. But if you're in this country, we're Americans. I've always rejected the hyphenated American. My background is Italian, and that's fine, but I'm an American. I'm not an Italo-American.
Yeah.
If I loved Italy so much, okay, I'd go to Italy, not just on a vacation.
And we still retain our culture.
And everybody's culture is significant to them, and I think that's great. It's a beautiful thing. I know even in the summer when they have, the Hispanic heritage thing, and of course the Italian thing, and that's all great, but understand, underneath it all, and I think part of this is a great plan to divide and conquer. And the more they can make people feel isolated, that the others are getting over on them, there's a paranoia that tends to set in. And that's not good for anybody.
And that's what really bothered me in 2020. And that's why I decided to, take part. And also, to honor not just my parents. I'm second generation.
Ditto.
They were first generation, and I'm supposed to be the next level. And, I want to give back. And also, the other reason I really joined is I look back, I'm really into, the veterans and honoring them and what they did And for all the vets that were not able to come back to this country and enjoy the freedoms that I had, this is why I'm choosing to do this now, to give back and try to do as much as I can for the next generation. And hopefully they can enjoy what we had.
I wonder if when we cash our chips in at the end of the ride, if we're actually queried when the man upstairs, if there is a man or woman upstairs, whatever, okay, and they say, you know, you were given these assets in your life, the intelligence and whatever, the familial background, good, bad, or indifferent. What did you do with it? And in English, did you, when you left, did you leave it in better shape, the same, or worse shape? And to me, whether that ever happens or not, just the thought process of that, to me, is very significant. And I'm blessed. I've got 12 grandkids. Where's Wood here, just to be sure? They're all healthy. They're all good students, all doing well. They range from 25 to 5. But I look at that and I say, the world that I'm basically entrusting to them, is it anywhere near as good as the world that my kids received or that I received? Again, I grew up in the 50s and the 60s, and post-World War II, post-Korea, and everything was booming and so on and so forth. You went to school, whatever school you went to, you worked hard, either you went into private business, whatever you did. But it was sort of like a very optimistic world that we were in at that point. And little by little, as the 60s ensued into the 70s and whatnot, and I know Vietnam was kind of a catalyst for all that, that wild-eyed enthusiasm and optimism seemed to go on the wane at that point. And now you get to the point that, and you see survey after survey, the young people in particular are nowhere near as gung-ho on America as our generation was. Is it because they're smarter? I don't think so. But I think part of it is the training that they've had in schools.
I think it's especially in colleges.
But John, they're getting at these kids not in college. They are, but they're getting it in high school. They're getting it in grammar school, and to some degree in kindergarten. They're being inculcated with this stuff.
Indoctrinated.
Yeah, and it's a frightening
Use any other word.
Yeah, it's exactly what it is. So this is why, you know, the people really are kind of down on this country, which is unbelievable. And as I said earlier, I just came back from this nice trip to Western Europe and whatnot. And when you see people in something like the Eiffel Tower, groups of them marching around with machine guns, and I know people recently that have just come back from South Korea, same kind of a thing. So we're, in a way, we're in this little bubble, but there's all sorts of churning in this world, and lots of people would give their eye teeth to see America fail. Yeah. And unfortunately, a lot of those people are quote-unquote Americans. And, you know, I look at the other major issue. It's like the Ukraine thing is almost not even on the minds of people right now, which is amazing, but that's another story. But the whole 9 yards right now is all Palestine and Israel.
Israel, yeah.
And what I'm seeing, and I'm not going to give you my political thought one versus the other, but all I can tell you is that Eisenhower, when he was leaving Europe after World War II, he said, make sure you take lots and lots of pictures of what we saw, you know, in Auschwitz and every place else. Otherwise, people won't believe this. They'll forget this. And that's roughly 75 years ago, whatever the exact number is.
A couple generations.
And people are right in the same place. But they're coming out with it. The anti-Israeli, the anti-Jewish fervor is like 20 times. Jewish people in this country are receiving more than 20 times the amount of hate crimes than their 3% of the population indicates. That's frightening. And just the fact that you have all these things going on in campuses and everything else. Now, I understand there's a lot of hell on both sides. And this thing goes back thousands of years, and you're not going to solve it, easily. But they're used to killing each other, and I'm afraid it's going to just escalate. And the Bible has said that, if and when there's an apocalypse, it's going to start in the Middle East. And you can see very clearly just exactly how those dominoes can fall.
And it's just amazing. Like pre-2020, I think we had a peace accord.
We were almost there.
We were almost there. And
when Yasser, Arafat basically killed it all.
I mean, and again,
well, that goes back more than 2020, but go back a bit.
But quickly, why I joined again was I think there are people, I call it pulling the Band-Aid off of a wound so it'll never heal. And just prior to 2020, I thought we were there. I thought we were progressing forward, but we got work to do.
Yeah, and I know this, that eye for an eye, tooth for a tooth. And I know on both sides they've had people, friends, relatives for generations killed by the other side. So it's not so easy to, do kumbaya. And that's the scary part of it. It really is. And then when you figure now the nuclear stakes on both sides are just so high, it's pretty damn frightening. Yeah. But nonetheless, it is what it is. And we still have, in my opinion, a great deal to be thankful for. And
that's what we have to look forward to this holiday season.
Absolutely. Getting together. And do yourselves a favor, guys. When you get together with your family, my suggestion, or friends, whatever the dynamic is, two things. Number one, everybody, which is what we do with my family, everybody goes around the table to articulate what they have to be thankful for. And there's an awful lot to be thankful for. And the other thing is, do yourself a great favor. Don't get into political discussions, because people don't change their opinions. They feel what they feel. Why muddy the issues? Don't get involved with the Palestine-Israeli thing, because that's going to be hardcore on either side. And people, they're not going to digest their meals, rather than it being a wonderful once-a-year opportunity for a celebration. Remember, it's non-sectarian. It has nothing to do with religion, okay? Whether you're Muslim, whether you're Christian, Jewish, doesn't matter. Agnostic, atheist. Enjoy it and thank God for everything. Thank whoever you believe in for what we have, because we have an awful lot to be thankful for. So, and that's where I'm at today. So I'm glad to be here. I'm glad that my friend John has joined us.
Thank you for having me, and happy
we're going
holidays.
to have John back on again. He's got a lot to say about a number of different issues, especially if I learn to shut my mouth so that he can actually get a word in edgewise.
I'm a good listener.
Right. Yes, you are, but you're a good speaker also.